Welcome to this short presentation from the recently formed RADISSD group, Raising Awareness of Dosage in Speech-Sound Disorders. We are a group of academics, researchers, managers and clinicians who all have a special interest in child speech-sound disorders and intensity of intervention or dosage, and have links with the Mistletoe SSD study. Our vision is to support the development and application of the evidence base for dosage of intervention for children with moderate to severe speech-sound disorders to improve their outcomes and the efficiency of SLT services across all areas of the UK. We know that the amount or dosage of intervention for children with SSD is typically dictated by traditional models of service delivery that are not evidence-based. We know that this impacts on speech and lifelong outcomes for children with more moderate severe SSD. We know that SLTs and parents alike are dissatisfied with dosage provided in therapy. And so, we want to support the rollout of more evidence-based dosage in service delivery models to improve outcomes and resource use. We hope that through this presentation you will gain understanding of the terminology around dosage in SSD, understanding of what the ideal evidence-based dosage is for different groups of children, opportunity to consider models of alternatives of service delivery, and an opportunity to generate an action you can take in your own practice in the next month.
So firstly, some terminology around dosage for speech-sound disorders. The dose form is the form the intervention takes, the intervention approach, the targets and the activities you choose. These need to be evidence-based and child-specific. We have a wide selection of evidence-based approaches to choose from, and different approaches will work better for different children or for the same child at different times. So after detailed assessment, that's the starting point in terms of dosage. The dose is the number of target trials or practices of the target words. The frequency is the number of sessions per week, and the duration is the total number of weeks. We can use Warren's formula to calculate cumulative intervention intensity, and you do this by taking the dose, the number of target trials in each session, multiplying that by the frequency, the number of sessions per week, and multiplying that by the intervention duration, the number of weeks of intervention. So for example, 70 target trials per session, once a week, over 12 weeks, would give us a cumulative intervention intensity of 840, while 70 target trials per session twice a week, over 12 weeks, would give us a cumulative intervention intensity of 1,680. So you can see how changing the model of service delivery can drastically increase the overall dosage.
From the evidence-based and literature, we know that the recommended dose for moderate to severe SSD is 50 to 100 target trials per session. The recommended frequency to get good outcomes is 2 to 4 sessions per week, and the duration of intervention that has been shown to achieve good outcomes is in the region of 18 to 36 plus sessions. These elements interact with one another, and we are yet to find out how this may impact on the amount of intervention required. There is a gap between what we know the evidence says and what we are currently able to deliver in practice. And that's what this group is about. Its aim is narrowing that gap. We want interventions to be effective, in other words, achieving the outcomes we want, as well as efficient, achieving the desired outcomes with the best use of resources, in other words, without wasting time, money, or energy. It has been shown that therapy more than once a week is more effective for children with phonological difficulties, as well as for children with childhood apraxia of speech. And evidence suggests that when therapy is provided more frequently, it's more efficient, making the best use of available resources and achieving good outcomes for children more quickly.
So let's look at the evidence base for dosage in phonological disorder. And if we look at Alan's study, a randomised controlled trial of 45 preschool children with phonological difficulties, and she wanted to see how multiple oppositions might be impacted by the frequency of sessions. And what she found was that more than once weekly sessions were really important for effective intervention for these kids. When we look at work that Lynn Williams has done into dose, that's the number of target trials per session, we see that she showed within session doses of less than 50 target trials per session are not effective when compared to a dose of more than 50. And indeed, when we come to children with more severe speech sound disorder, this should increase to 70 or 100 more target trials per session. If we look at the evidence base around dosage for childhood apraxia of speech, we again see when it comes to frequency that more than once weekly intervention is important. Indeed, these kids need a much more intensive intervention, and we see in the research that 4 times weekly sessions in blocks of 12 to 16, followed by a 4 to 6 week break from therapy, is optimally effective for approaches like rapid syllable transition therapy and Nuffield. There is some evidence that as few as 2 sessions per week can also be effective, but if we want to see the continued progress and generalization effects that you can get, then we want to have this higher intensity delivery of 4 times per week. The dose for these children needs to be 100 or more per session to produce optimal outcomes. So what about breaks then? Breaks cause a lot of reflection and discussion, don't they? Because they're inherently very much built into most service delivery models for these children worldwide. But yet there's not a lot of evidence about their value or their lack of value. We need to learn more about breaks. And the important thing to know about breaks as well is that the length of the break, as well as how that interacts with what dosage the child receives when they actually do have therapy, will be important factors in how useful or not the break is. When we look at the quality improvement work that Hilary McFall and her colleagues did in a regular community service, we found that the breaks, which were 8 or more weeks long, were just not necessarily appropriate. And that, plus the overall dosage package for these children, resulted in slow, patchy progress. But what we do know is that if we look at children with CAS, repeated cycles of this intensive intervention, so that's 4 times weekly sessions with short breaks in between of 4 to 6 weeks, can result in ongoing speech improvements. It seems from the research, and I know I've just said we need to learn more about this, but the higher the intensity, and perhaps the longer the period the child has to bed in and learn a new skill, then the more secure the speech gains and the more likely that these new speech skills will continue to improve with no intervention and will be maintained. Of course, it's important you consider your own clinical judgment alongside the evidence when thinking about this area. So we're not necessarily saying that these kids need more therapy. Rather, what we're wanting to support people to do is think about how they would repackage their therapy so that the dosage is more evidence-based and hopefully then result in more efficient and effective therapy. And indeed, this is what Hilary McFall, Justine Smith and Linda Mulgrew did in their Quality Improvement Project, which was based in their community service looking at children with severe predominantly phonological speech sound disorder, and I was lucky enough to be involved in that work. And what they found was that these children who had the more evidence-based dosage had better outcomes with less therapy overall than with routine care. And of course, the dose form, the initial intervention approach and targets for the children were evidence-based and child and family appropriate. That was the foundation. It was the dosage then that was manipulated and made such a difference for these children in the QI project. So what was the dosage in the QI project? They received up to twice weekly sessions with an average dose of around 87 target trials per session for up to 12 weeks. So compared to their routine care model, they made quite a few changes.
In this figure from the McFall study, we can see that the routine care model consisted of therapy once weekly with a dose of 30 target trials delivered over around 6 weeks. And then children went on to have a break of around 8 weeks. And that was cyclical. But by the team making a more evidence-based decision about the service and how they wanted to deliver the service in terms of dosage, these children did appear to benefit greatly in terms of their outcomes. So please do check out the paper, which is free to access through BMJ Open Quality.
So the key take-home messages from this work and the research we've been looking at are that providing a model of care where dosage is not evidence-based results in poor outcomes and poor use of resources for children with severe speech sound disorder. This inefficient and ineffective speech and language therapy has the potential to have long-term impacts on children with speech sound disorder, influencing their academic success, their later life opportunities, their mental health, and their ability to form friendships. Indeed, McAllister et al.'s recent work has shown that children with persistent speech sound disorder at 8 years of age have twice the risk of self-harm with intent to suicide at 16 than children who do not have speech sound disorder. So it's a really important thing for us to get right in speech and language therapy. So a key question we need to ask is, what can you do as clinicians that can easily change practice to make it more efficient and effective for these children? And of course, the first thing is getting the dose form right. That's your therapy approach and the targets you select, making sure that they're evidence-based and that they meet the child's needs. And then we get into the other measures of dosage, looking at dose or the number of target trials and sessions. This is an area that's within your control. You can increase your number of target trials per session for children with moderate to severe speech sound disorder to up to 70 or more trials. And when you're looking at more severe persistent speech sound disorder, you can increase your trials up to 100 or more per session. It's important, if you can, to champion and get involved in quality improvement projects in your trusts, which look at changing dosage of service delivery, in particular considering things like dose, frequency and length of breaks. And last but not least, we all need to continue to try and be flexible. We all need to try to lead to influence upwards. And I know that the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists has some very useful leadership courses that are available to us as members. And also important to keep the word being spread out there, keep the debate open, keep the discussions going. And we can look at also different models of service delivery that have been tried in the research, which we're going to look at next.
This slide references some of the evidence we have around innovative ways of increasing dosage in speech sound disorder intervention. Ideas such as group therapy, telepractice and apps, working with parents, intensive speech camps, training assistants, and changing models of service delivery. Some of these are not suitable for children with childhood apraxia of speech or severe speech sound disorders. And every service is different, so different solutions might work better to overcome the challenges around increasing dosage in different services or geographical areas. It's also helpful to find out what doesn't work. you may come across opportunities to be involved in projects such as these through your SEN networks. We hope you're able to take some time for reflection or discussion after watching this video. Consider coming up with one small action that you could take towards implementing more evidence-based dosage for the children with speech sound disorders you work with. Please contact us at RADISSD to share your stories of how you are changing dosage to be more evidence-based, whether you achieve good outcomes or poor outcomes, but good learning that we can all benefit from. The vignettes in the Autumn 24 edition of the Royal College Bulletin are examples of such stories and also show you how you can write up your innovations and your learning. Please also do get in touch if you have ideas on how to influence or lobby for change to service delivery for children with moderate to severe speech sound disorders. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you.